Hi stitching friends. So today you're joining me in my kitchen and we are going to have some fun trying to dye some fabric and some fibers. It's always for me an experiment when I dye fabric. I've never been able to get the exact same look twice, which is okay with me. In the beginning, I never wrote anything down that I did, but I have kind of started trying to make some notes on how I accomplished a certain look. But any type of dyeing, whether it's coffee dyeing, dyeing with RIT dye, or the walnut crystals, it's never exact, and it's very unpredictable. So keep that in mind if you do attempt to dye something. It may not turn out the way that you'd hoped, or it may turn out better than you hoped. So I'll just give you a quick it's been a long day already. Quick rundown of some of the things we're going to use today. I have instant coffee. I have walnut crystals, walnut ink crystals. I have RIT dye. I also have Tim Holtz Distress Inks. And those, I think, I'm not going to do any tea dyeing today. I think those are the only things we're going to use to dye today. You also want to have on hand some plastic gloves, an old cloth that you don't mind getting dye on, clothes that you don't mind getting dye on, an old t-shirt. What else? Obviously you want the water. I have my surface covered in paper. I saved a lot of paper from my move, the paper that was used for packing my household goods. I saved a lot of that, and so I use that to protect my surfaces. I use an old cookie sheet and some baking paper or parchment paper, it's the same thing. Your item to dye, obviously. What else? I sometimes, I do use salt in my dye when I use the RIT dye. Not when I coffee stain, but when I use the RIT dye, I do use salt. And I think that's about it. So the first thing that I'm going to dye, I don't know if you guys remember, I stitched this as one of my Mania starts, and I have it finished now. And this is from the Christmas special Punch Needle and Panda Stitcher issue, and it's by Joyce Reed, and she does give directions on how to achieve the look that she did. And here's my finished piece. Okay, and what she uses to age her piece after stitching is instant coffee, vanilla, and a cup of warm water. So that will be what our first project is. So let me switch the camera and we'll get right to it. So we have our 1 cup of warm water. To that we're going to add 2 tablespoons of instant coffee. Close that up so I don't spill it everywhere. I like to use disposable spoons when I'm mixing my dye. That way I don't have to worry about washing anything later. Plus, I think when you use the RIT dye, or you know, it's a chemical, obviously, and you don't want to use the same utensils that you eat with for that. So I always use this the same container, so that I'm not mixing my dyeing containers and utensils with ones that I use for food. Okay, so once you think that's mixed up well, and I warm the water in the microwave for 2 minutes. Now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of vanilla. I'm just using the cheap imitation vanilla. I'm not going to use the good stuff for this. And it'd call for 2 tablespoons of that as well. Set that aside. Mix that together. And she sprayed hers. So I just picked up a very inexpensive spray bottle at the Dollar Tree. And let's see if I can pour this in without making a giant, huge mess. Do that amount. Okay, so I have prepped my peas by ironing it. I'm putting it on an old cookie sheet, which I just picked these up at thrift stores so that I can use cheap things. And I've slayed my fabric out here. I've pressed it first, and we're gonna just spray. And you can air dry this. You can put it in the oven. Ooh, this smells good. Smells like I'm at Starbucks. Obviously, it's a personal preference on how much you want to do. Let me see if I can get a close-up of hers. She is quite heavy in some areas on hers, so it's a personal preference. And on her directions, it does say allow to dry. And repeat the process to achieve the desired look for your project. So you can, there are a few ways you can dry your projects, and that's to let it air dry out in the sun, in the house. You can put it in the oven, but you need to watch it very carefully. I usually would do mine on about a 200-degree oven. Check it every 5 minutes or so. The other method would be to take it to the ironing board and iron it dry, or you can, if you have a heat gun, you can dry it that way too, but again, being very careful. And I have down here on the floor I use Ranger heated tool. You could probably use a hairdryer as well. The heated tool does get hotter than a hairdryer, but for the sake of trying to get this to dry quickly, I'm going to hit it with the heat gun real quick and see what happens. And you can see, actually, whenever you're dyeing anything, when it's going to look darker when it's wet. Oh, I'm saying a lot. I'm so sorry. I normally do not do that. So as it dries, it will lighten a bit. I will say that when you dry anything in the oven, it gives it a completely different look. I used to have some items in a shop in Williamsburg, Virginia. I used that shop for, oh gosh, many years, maybe 6 to 8 years. Then when I moved overseas, the last time, it just became too cost prohibitive to mail things back. But I used to make primitive dolls, and I would stain the muslin, and I would do that in the oven, and sometimes they would come out wonderful, and other times it was like, there is no way I'm gonna put that in my shop. So I think oven drying is the most unpredictable. It's probably one of the quickest ways to dry, but it is also the most unpredictable. When you're coffee staining, I don't usually dry things that I've used the Ritz dye on in the oven. Okay, so this is feeling pretty dry. Apart from over here on this corner, which you can see is still a bit darker, so we'll go a moment longer on that. Okay, so I think I would like it to be a little bit darker in spots. Just shaking this up a bit again, and I'm going to give it a few more sprays. Also, you can brush any of this on. I just pick up the really inexpensive brushes from Michael's. So I'm going to give it a little bit. Not really sure how I'm going to finish this, so in the event that I frame it, I'm going to make sure that I have covered a larger area. Okay, so rather than have you sit here and watch me dry it with the heat gun, I'm going to pause and I'll be right back. Alright, so I am a very impatient person when it comes to this type of thing, and the heat gun was not drying it as quickly as I wanted. If you just use the spray, which is a very fine mist, the heat gun or hair dryer would dry it quicker because you're not putting as much liquid onto the project. But when you use a brush or a sponge, or you submerge the fabric completely into the dye mixture, obviously it's going to get more saturated, so it's going to take a bit longer to get the moisture out. So what I've decided to do is I've got several layers of newsprint down here on my ironing board. I'm going to cover my piece with more newsprint. I've got my hot iron here, no steam, and I'm just going to dry it this way. Sorry for my squeaky ironing board. And let's check and see. You can see how the heat has caused a reaction with the coffee and the vanilla. And I must say, the vanilla makes it smell very nice. Okay, I still feel a bit of dampness in there. So we would just continue. You could probably iron directly onto the project, but I prefer not to, if at all possible. But because you're ironing on paper, you do want to keep that iron moving so we don't set the house on fire. Okay, so I think I'm gonna call that good. I like the way it looks. The piece itself, the design itself to me is kind of an old world look. So I like the way, the effect that this has. Looks like it's been around for a while. I like that look. So this I'm happy with. I'm gonna leave it at that. And we'll go on to the next project. I forgot to mention, this fabric is 32 count white Lugana, or it was. You can see how different it looks now from what it looked in the beginning. I'll show you the back. So it is dyed on both sides, okay? The other thing to keep in mind is that every fabric dyes a bit differently. Lugana dyes differently than linen dyes differently than Aida, and perhaps even every manufacturer dyes a bit different. Zweigart from, what's the other one? Can't remember. So I thought I would show you, this is 36 count white linen. And because we have all this, plus this left, we're gonna use that a few more times. If you only have one piece to dye, you could probably get away, obviously you could get away with a half a cup of water, a half a cup of warm water, 1 tablespoon of coffee, and 1 tablespoon of vanilla. But if you think you might be dyeing more within a few days, you can keep this in a container in the refrigerator for a few days. It will mold after a while. I'm not really sure how long it takes, but I have found moldy stain in my refrigerator. So for this part, I am going to put on gloves because it does stain your hands. And I don't know, maybe we'll start off with a little bit of spray again. And clearly you can concentrate in one area, or you can just give it an all over good spray. Concentrating in a few areas. However, what I really want to do, and I just picked these up again at the Dollar Tree for $1. And that way I have something that, let's just pour it all in. Something that I don't have to worry about using my dishes that I eat out of. I'm just going to dunk this in, and I'm going to wad it up. Squeeze it out. paper towels handy. We're going to experiment a little bit here. I have no idea what I might use this piece for. Normally I would have serged the edges of this, but I forgot. Okay. I think what we will do, I have a spray bottle of water, plain water. I'm going to take a few little coffee crystals. Ooh. That was a lot. Hang on. Well, they're there. And sprinkle them around. And I'm going to take my just plain water, and I'm going to mist over these crystals. I will say too, guys, if you, even after you, like if you heat set a piece, if you're not happy with it, take it to the sink. Try to wash some of it out. I mean, if you're not happy with it, what is it going to hurt, right? Just going to take my brush and kind of tap that. See what happens. Taking the coffee again, spraying it over. I'm just kind of working those coffee crystals in. Okay, I think the other thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to do it right here on the edge. I'm going to take a little bit of coffee. I'm going to spray it without making a mess. I should have sprayed the coffee down first, so that I have a high concentration of coffee. And I'm going to do some of that on here. And it's just random. It's willy-nilly. It's whatever you want. Okay, I think I like that. Sort of. I don't, you know, I try to have gloves on. Even when I'm gardening, I try to have gloves on, and then, I don't know, they just always end up coming off, and my hands are a mess. Okay, so this is going to be very, very wet. Let me see, it's going to be too wet to try to dry. I think I'm going to set this out in the sun, on my patio table, and see what happens. And let me go do that, and I'll be right back. Sorry, forgot to turn the camera on. This is another piece that I just finished recently. It is Summer Solstice by The Primitive Hare. I think it was a free one on her website. or on her blog. I just want to give it a very light spraying of this coffee, and then do I dare? Actually, I think I will bring this over here. I have several layers of paper on my table, but you know what? I'm gonna put a few more. Never be too careful. I don't. Come here, Mr. Iron. And this fabric is R&R 30 count birch, I think. So I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to iron directly on top of it. Can you see this? Doesn't look a lot different. Well, I guess it does. That's not the look I want. I will say, if you use your iron, especially if you use it directly on your dyed pieces, you need to make sure and clean it between. Okay, that was not what I was looking for. The paper actually wicked out quite a bit of the coffee, but so I probably should have dried it a little bit first before I ironed it. Do I like that though? Maybe I like that. I think I like that. So we're gonna call that good. See if you can. It just gives, sometimes you just want a subtle color variation. So if you look at this versus this, you can tell the difference. Okay, let me get set up for the next one, which will be the Rit Tan dye, and I'll be right back. I wanted to show you guys what's happening with the 36 count linen that we put out in the sun. Look, I love it. It's, what time is it? It's 12:36 in the afternoon, and it's about 88 degrees out. It's in the direct sun. It is mostly dry, but I want to go put it back out and let it get completely dry. But I just wanted to show you kind of what the process was. Okay, be right back. All right, so we're back. I wanted to show you what I'm going to attempt to duplicate. This is another piece that I started for Stitch Mania. It's called Coffin Buzz, and it was a free pattern by Plum Street Sampler, still available on her website. As you can see, I've not gotten any further. I do remember what I did on this piece was I used the Rit Tan dye, and then I coffee stained it, and maybe you can see some of the little coffee bits in here up close. And then I used Tim Holtz Distress Ink on it. So I don't have another piece of this exact fabric, but I do have another piece of Ada. So let's hope that it will kind of turn out the same, okay? So let me put this away. I am anxious to get back to that one. So what I have here, I have wet my Ada just to get some of the sizing out of it. I don't like stitching on really stiff fabric, so I washed it, just ran it under the water in the sink to get some of the sizing out. I want to kind of leave it a little bit squished up together like that. I have about 2 cups of hot water that I put in the microwave. You do want to use gloves when you're using RIT dye. Ask me how I know. Okay, so once I open my RIT dye and use some of it, I buy these little containers again at the dollar store. I think you get 6 in a pack for $1, and then I just normally I cut the top. See the pearl gray, I cut the top off and I tape it on. For some reason I threw the whole box away of over the tan. Okay, and again, you know, it's like cooking. When you have a recipe that you use a lot, you never look at the recipe again, you just do it by taste. And that's kind of how I've gotten with dyeing, although I want to try, like I said, try to write down and make notes of how much I use so that I can possibly duplicate it. But I'm just going to take, this is probably like 1/8 of a teaspoon. I'm going to take 1, okay, so it's probably 1/4. I would say, let's try that, a teaspoon of RIT dye. And you want to mix that well. I'm also going to probably a teaspoon of salt. Whoops, and some on the table. And you want to mix your dye, your RIT dyes very well. If you've ever watched anyone else, and this has happened to me, and you think you have it mixed well, but you dye your fabric and then you have these little specks of pink or red, that is a granule that did not get completely mixed. I mean, if it's just 1 or 2 spots, kind of, it depends on the look you're going for. You know, you might not care, but sometimes you don't want that little speck of red in there. So you just mix and mix and mix until you think that you have it completely mixed, and then you mix some more. Hot. It's actually very beautiful outside today. We have had the hottest summer. It's been for days upon days upon days, 99, 100, or even when, like a few days back, it was 88, but the heat index was 100 because it was so humid. And if it's not super hot like that, hovering around 100 or slightly above 100, it's raining. And because it's been so hot, it's like the heat thunderstorms, and we have tremendous lightning, which I love. I love thunder and lightning. But it's like, okay, this is my month off. I want to be outside enjoying it, but it's been either too hot or too rainy. Okay, I think that that's probably mixed good enough. And what I do I remember what I did for this one, is that I poured this directly on the fabric while the fabric was bunched up, in hopes that I would get kind of a mottled look. Mottled look, not mottled, Suzette. Okay. So then I just kind of let it sit in like that for a while. Pressing it down, making sure that it at least got some coverage. And again, this is just, the name on the box was tan, plain tan. Let that sit for a minute or two. Get our sample out. Okay, I think actually I'm going to take it out and see how it looks. Again, it's not the exact same Ada. It's probably not even the same brand. It's just stuff out of my stash. So this one, it looks a bit darker. And move this out of the way. But you can see it does have stretch it out here. If you think it look, you know, you can take and wick up some of the dye if you don't like dark spots or you want to lighten an area. You could take it and run it under the faucet and so you can remove some color. I don't know. Let's see something. I'm going to take some water, spray it into this area. See if I have a semi-clean paper towel over here. And wick up some of that color. I'm not going to rinse this because I'm actually quite liking this look. I think what we're going to do is not get your glove caught in. This is why I don't like gloves. I think I'm going to take it to the ironing board and see what happens. And I'm just gonna put it, I'm gonna put it between a lot of paper, so I know from past experience, putting it between the paper and ironing it is gonna wick a bit more of the color out. So let me do that, and I will be back to show you what happened. Hi again. I just wanted to show you what has happened. It is now 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I went out and I checked on my 36 count linen that we coffee stained, and it was dry. So I pressed it, and this is all of its prim loveliness. It's pretty extreme. I totally understand this is the other side, that it's not everyone's cup of coffee. Oh, I'm sorry that this is not for everyone, but you know, if you do like prim things, this is the way you achieve it. Okay, I also went ahead and, let me put that out of the way, and pressed the one that we used the tan dye on, okay, and finished drying it up. I'm debating, it's much darker than my original, but this fabric, I think that this fabric was a white Aida, while this one was a cream Aida. Plus I might have used a bit more of the tan. So on this one I used a full tablespoon to 2 cups of water. I may have only used a half a tablespoon, or teaspoon, 1 teaspoon to 2 cups of water. Probably only did a half a teaspoon to 2 cups of water on this. So I'm trying to decide whether or not I should add any coffee into this one, because it's quite a bit darker already, as you can see. But I will show how I got the, what did I do with those? I brought them in. The staining with the Tim Holtz. So let me see what I did. Clearly, I did not put them on this table. Okay, be right back. All right, so in order to get the coffee ring look and the coffee splashes look, like I have here on this one, what I used, whoops, you can use just the bottom of an old jar. I actually used the bottom of my Starbucks mug, and I used Tim Holtz Distress ink in the walnut stain flavor. And then I used this set of stamps that I got when I lived in the UK. It's called Splodge and Splat by Inkylicious. And as you can see, they are well loved and used. And I've cleaned them and they still stain. And then I used clear acrylic blocks, which you will see, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and pretend as if I am making another needle minder, another one of these. So I'm going to try to concentrate my stamping around the saying. Okay. Oh, and I also have baby wipes to clean off the bottom of my containers. So let me pull this, set this aside, and paper towels. So I will go ahead and get my stamps ready just by attaching them to the clear blocks. My ink pad, have my baby wipes handy because I don't like to leave the ink on the bottom of my mug for too long. Okay, so the first thing I'll show you is I just simply took this and inked up the bottom of my mug like that. I thought it was too much, so I just lightly dabbed it off there, and then I'll show you here. I just pressed it down. Okay, and then you just repeat the process, kind of overlapping, like you would see, you know, if you set your coffee cup down a couple of times. I think I'm going to do a few smaller ones. And if you don't get it inked up perfectly, that's fine, because you know what? Nothing in life is perfect. Okay, I'll do maybe a big one down here. And perhaps that will be all. So then I just take and clean that off. It will wash off too with soap and water, but okay. And for the splotches, you just do the same. You just ink up your stamp. Sometimes it's easier to take the ink to the stamp. You have it nice and inked up, and just decide where you want your spills. Kind of working in a sort of random pattern. This one, a little bit harder to hold on to. It's the same as if you were stamping on paper. You're just doing it on fabric rather than paper. And I think what we'll do, actually, we'll try to balance it out. So I'm going to do another one of these up in this corner. Okay. Maybe you just play. Okay, and I haven't done the big spot. You ink it up. Actually, I probably need to re-ink my pad there. And you overlap them. Sorry if I just shook the camera. Because you do want to, you know, you want to press down quite hard. To get good coverage. Am I happy with that? I think I'm happy with that. Okay, so then, like I said, you can take it and run it under the faucet and clean them off. I like to clean them off as quickly as I possibly can. keep the staining at a minimum. And put the lid back on. And there we have our piece ready for coffin buzz. Okay, what I would do actually first is I would take this again to the iron and heat set the ink. This is not something that you're going to want to wash after you stitch it. You will treat it just like any other hand-dyed fabric. It is not color fast. So you do want to wash it. I mean, you do want to be careful when you're stitching not to get anything on it. Unless it's coffee, of course, and then what is that going to hurt? Right? But then you would want to heat set that after you put coffee on it. Okay, I think, I don't know, maybe do I want to try to add, you know what, let's just go for it. Let's just go for it. We're going to take some of our coffee granules again and just sprinkle them around. And I will have to kind of do this in sections, I think. And we're actually going to take, I don't know, are we? I don't know. I think we're just going to take water. I was going to use the coffee stain, but I think water is just best. I'm going to wet this sponge applicator, or not. Here we go. And I'm going to dab some of this coffee crystals into the sponge. You can do it with a paper towel as well. Sorry for the reach. Now you can't see. Let's move it over to this side. Okay, it's sticking. You know what? I'm just going to use my finger. To be careful because even the force of the mist will move them around. Do the misting first. But you see, you just play. You just play until you're happy with it. Don't play around. And you kind of work that coffee into the fabric. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do more of that around just so that, I don't know, it just gives it a little something. And I'll be back. This is what happens when you refuse to wear gloves. Craziness. All right, guys, I think I will go ahead and stop this video now so that it doesn't get horribly long, and I will pick up on the next video with walnut crystal ink dyeing and dyeing some trim with the distress inks, and make that a completely separate video. But I just wanted to recap what we did on this one. We did the coffee and vanilla staining on this. and this was the 32 count white Lugana. You can see here that was the original, and this is our dyeing work. And as I look at this, I'm not sure I'm completely satisfied with it. I might add some more. I want a little bit darker on some areas, but what I'll do is I'll just go in and I will respray in those areas and then let it dry, and I will show that in my monthly video at the end of the month. Then after we did that, we dyed with the same dye solution of the coffee and the vanilla, a 36 count linen, and it was white too as well. And that is how that came out with drying in the sun. And then we just lightly sprayed the 30 count R&R in the color of birch on this side, and this is the original color, and that was just a light spraying of that. And then lastly, I went ahead and I put some coffee crystals on this one so that it would have a bit more depth to it, or texture. And that was with the tan Rit dye and the coffee and the Tim Holtz Distress ink. So here's the deal. If any of you would be interested in receiving this piece of fabric to stitch the coffin buzz or any other design of your choice, I will be doing a drawing for a giveaway of this, and the normal giveaway rules apply. You need to be a subscriber. If you're under 18, please have your parents' permission. Leave a comment below that you would be interested in being in the drawing, and I will leave the giveaway open until midnight Central Standard Time on August 7th, and I will be back to draw a winner on the 8th, and I will serge the edges and get it sent out to you. This piece, did I already say how big it is? It's about 14.5 by 17.5, and it's 18 count Aida, so coffin buzz would fit on it. And I think that's about it. I hope that this was helpful to you and that you will give dyeing, coffee dyeing, and Rit dye process a try. It's really just trial and error, and it's kind of fun. You never know what you're gonna get. So on that note, I will close this video for now. I will be back with the next one shortly. And I hope you guys have a great stitchy day. Talk to you soon.